All right, you are on the platform. Now, my next guest we were going to talk about, and we will talk about, the BBC and its deliberate and artful misreporting of Trump. Could never happen in New Zealand, could it? But I think because of who this person is, they've probably also got some views on the news that came out last night around the utter corruption and moral corruption of the upper echelons of our police force. And we're joined by Bob McCoskrie from Family First. Geez, Bob, you wouldn't believe it.
Yeah, it's a shocking story, and I think the problem is, as you mentioned, Louise Nicholas, there was a lot of credibility and trust that was lost in the police, and
well,
they've had to rebuild that over time.
I've talked to her for 20 minutes this morning. We had her on air.
Yeah.
And that was 30 years ago, Bob.
Well, one of my, kind of favourite statements to remind me is that credibility is hard fought for and hard won, but it's easily lost. And when you lose credibility, it has a major impact. Now, the problem is that the credibility for the police at the top echelons is next to nothing. And this points to the wider issue of why we were originally going to catch up this morning, Sean, is just around trust in our institutions, around media, around police, around politicians. It's not good for society when you can't trust senior leadership in your culture.
Well, I guess the one thing we could say is that the people who were involved in this absolute scandal are no longer there, and we would appear to have a new set of bosses at the police who we can only hope operate differently. But I wonder too, and I mentioned in the show this morning, it seems to have happened, this evil, and I'm going to call it evil because it is, seems to have happened in an era of kindness and DEI and, and meeting your quotas and rainbow bloody ticks.
Well, it's also occurred in a culture of go soft on criminals, that the criminals are the actual victims. And so therefore, we've given name suppression to sexual offenders if they pay over a little bit of money, which has been a disgrace. In fact, there was a law that was passed just last week, a new law around this whole area, where name suppression would only be granted if the victim agreed. Which is a good development, and it was agreed by all in Parliament. But the other amazing thing is that they introduced a clause that said that lawyers cannot cross-examine complainants under the age of 12 around the area of consent. In other words, you always assume that for under 12s there is no consent. Now, while I agree that they shouldn't be cross-examined, and it's amazing we had to introduce a law to protect them, under 12, I think it should be under 16, basically the age of sexual consent. So, I'm not quite sure why it was as young as 12 that we're putting young girls and boys under that type of cross-examination. So, look, I think there has been a wake-up. Credit to Louise Nicholas for having led the charge on this. Ruth Money is doing a great job as the sort of victim's voice, and we've just got to keep pushing on this issue and stop going soft and being apologists for criminals. But the left have always been apologists for criminals. I don't know if you saw that in New York, the new bastion of leftism with their new mayor, that, they're replacing police with social workers now. So that's going to go well, isn't it? Let's watch that space.
Come with me. I've got some counselling to give you, young man. Let's move on to the issue we'd originally teed up on. The BBC, the Director of News and the Director General of the BBC have resigned after it was revealed that a Panorama program, once their flagship documentary series, quite clearly and blatantly edited a speech of Donald Trump's to make it look as if he was egging on an insurrection after the previous election, after he was voted out. Clearly a complete hit job, a complete setup. And quite rightly, heads rolling at the BBC, and it's an institution like our police that appears to be in reputation freefall. I thought, they'd never do that in New Zealand. But you went and did a little bit of digging and went a bit of looking. And in fact, TVNZ came out and said, we'd never do that, right? Even though they take a lot of BBC stuff. We didn't air the Panorama documentary. They were maybe fibbing, you've found out, Bob.
Well, it's not only on this issue, and look, let's deal with this issue. Yeah, I mean, I found footage from 2021. Actually, somebody tweeted it to me on X, and so I went and examined it, and I thought, yeah, they've done exactly the same thing. They said we're gonna go down to the Capitol. Trump says we're going to go down to the Capitol, and then they immediately splice it and show all this violence at the Capitol. Yeah. And they don't show it in context that he says we're going to go down and we're going to cheer on the senators and the congressmen who are doing what Trump wants them to do. Look, whether you agree with the speech or not, what they have deliberately done, and in some ways I would encourage people to read the actual speech that Trump made at the Capitol, because you'll see that not only does he encourage them to go down peacefully, but when he talks about the fight, it's not about going down to the Capitol. It's fighting for the values and the processes and elections.
Completely out of context. Also, TVNZ, of course, who shot effigies of Donald Trump with, I don't know, salt guns or something, remember, on the breakfast show. Well, if it's good enough for the BBC, if it's good enough for heads to roll at the BBC, why isn't it good enough for heads to roll at TVNZ?
Well, it wouldn't be just on this story alone, Sean. That's the interesting thing, because I've actually, when TV1 released their own report that they'd commissioned about TV1 and then summarised their own report.
Their independent report that they paid for and selected the guy who did the report independently.
Yeah, and said there's no bias. When I did an analysis of that, I just reminded people about the fact of examples of when, for example, Jack Tame managed to somehow get Trump, who was talking about illegal immigration and protecting women, somehow turning that into an abortion issue. There was another one where they, another example where they've cut speeches. Oh, it was about Liz Cheney, and Liz Cheney, Trump, implying that Trump wanted Liz Cheney shot at by people. You know, she should be shot. What he was saying was, it's very easy for politicians to sit in their plush offices in Washington, D.C., put people out on the, up to fight against the enemy. How would she feel if, he called her a warmonger?
So should the head of TVNZ and the head of news resign if they're going to hold themselves to the standards of the BBC?
Well, I think probably what was most... the worst part was that on Monday night, One News tried to make out that they have not used the clip. Now, you could argue that they're right, that they haven't used the clip from the documentary that has caused all this stir. But have they done exactly what the BBC did? Yes, they have.
Oh, they have?
And the evidence is there.
Well then heads need to roll at TVNZ.
Well, that's the theory. I tell you what, though, it's not just TVNZ, because last night, and I did flick it through to you, and I'm not sure if you saw it in time.
Yeah, I was a bit busy with this other story,
Well, News Hub, we actually found that News Hub on the night of January 6th, when they did their report, they did exactly the same thing. They took the first bit of the comment, and then they talked about fight.
Or they took a feed from someone who was using the BBC edit, more likely.
But you know what the problem is, Sean? I don't know if you've seen the One News website today, but they've quoted so it's entitled, this is on the One News website this morning, BBC resignations over Trump scandal reveal pressure on public broadcasters. Now, I know you're thinking...
F's sake, no, they're saying we're the victims here.
Yeah. You probably think they're going to say there's pressure on them to be honest and not to misrepresent and push a narrative. No, according to a senior lecturer in journalism at the University of Folkestone, Melbourne, it says a question concerns the effectiveness of and integrity of the BBC's internal editorial procedures for investigating complaints. So it's just about how we're handling the complaints. Here's the best bit. And the pressure being brought to bear on the BBC by conservative political and media forces.
At least it wasn't far right. They could have jumped the shark completely and said far right Nazis. I hate to say it, that's so Givon bloody McSkimming, isn't it? Let's make it all about us being the victim. That's like the Harmful Digital Communications Act being misused. You ever had that thrown against you?
Sean, I don't know if you saw also that the NZ Me editor-at-large, Shane Curry, he was on News Talk ZB yesterday, and he said, a reporter's job when covering the news is to report the facts accurately, fairly, and in a balanced view. Well, that would be nice.
Yeah.
And some of the criticism that's been directed towards the media is that a lot of reporters have been allowed to inject their own opinion or analysis into those news reports. Well, it's not a news report if it's got opinion, Shane.
Yeah.
But then he says, quote, I think we're getting to the point now where you'll see much more clearly differentiated, this is news, this is opinion, this is analysis. Well, if that's ever happens, knock me over with a feather. I've seen no evidence of it.
Yeah.
And look, I just think the media have been laid bare for what they've been doing for a long time with a lot of stories. The BBC were pinged not only for their coverage of Trump, also their coverage of Gaza. They did a documentary where the narrator was a boy in Gaza. What the BBC didn't say
that
was
complete
the boy was the son of a Hamas operator.
the Hollywood propaganda.
The trans issue as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look,
And of course,
that was the other thing
Sean,
on the trans issue. You know, I heard lots of things about the Posey Parker rally saying the orders not to intervene, to let those women get beaten up in Albert Park and to run Posey Parker essentially out of town came from higher up. I didn't believe it. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I look at what's come out about McCoskrie and I just wonder, I have to wonder how bad our police force was, how ideologically captured they were.
Just Google New Zealand Police Diversity Liaison and you'll see just how enraptured they are in the whole DEI diversity. The police are quick to turn up to pride parades and virtue signal and appoint diversity officers, but they didn't seem that keen to be proactively protecting women at the Posey Parker rally. So this is the problem. This is where credibility is easily lost. Look, as you say, it's taken 30 years for it to be rebuilt again, and now we're back to square one. It's a dark day for New Zealand in terms of our trust in the institutions of both the police and of the media. Within them, there are some great police officers, there's some great journalists, but unfortunately the model it appears to be broken at the moment, and New Zealanders just can't trust, and that's a dangerous position for us to be in, especially with, you know, you and I both being ex kind of mainstream media, but cancelled because we hold certain views.
I don't feel like I've never felt less bloody cancelled in my life, Bob. Thank you
It's free. I always say, Sean, that being cancelled is like going through puberty. You're dead scared of it, but once you've gone through it, it's awesome.
It's wonderful. We better stop it there. I thank you very much indeed for your time, Bob. Always a pleasure. That is Bob McCoskrie from Family First.